What's happening, guys, and welcome back to Celebrity Overdose. Dave Chappelle ticked off a lot of people by making an insensitive joke in his Netflix special The Closer. The comedian was recently booed off stage by students on a joke that he made, which has put his career at risk. Here's everything about Dave Chappelle booed off stage by students after Netflix joke. But before we get started, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and do give our video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Number 5. Dave Chappelle booed off stage by students. The comedian Dave Chappelle has been facing major criticism leading up to his recent Netflix special The Closer. Recently, he visited the high school where he graduated from, known as the Duke Ellington School of Art in Washington, and the students had a lot to say to him. Dave Chappelle has been the center of controversial statements and jokes, and that has always put his career at stake. But the American comedian never backs down from his statements, no matter how insensitive they might seem. Chappelle has become the target of cancel culture on several occasions, but his recent Netflix special came at a price for him. Young people and celebrities all around America have been calling out Dave and calling his jokes insensitive. Dave has also been titled bigot by one of the students at Duke Ellington School of Arts. As he attended his childhood school in hopes to answer some questions about his Netflix special, he was bombarded with criticism from the students as well as the parents. The students at Duke Ellington School of Art held a protest upon hearing that the school's theater will be renamed in honor of Dave Chappelle as he's a graduate of the school. However, the renaming of the theater has since been postponed due to the protests. There were a total of 580 students in attendance ranging from ages 15 to 18. The phones were taken away from the students in order to prevent them from filming the event, which was also a problem for some students. In one instance, as a student stood up and exclaimed, "I'm 16 and I think you're childish, you handle it like a child." They then responded to the student by saying, "My friend, with all due respect, I don't believe you could make one of the decisions I have to make on a given day." Students pointed out that they were actually hoping for an apology from the comedian rather than a comment like such. Number 4. Students intimidated by Chappelle. Dave Chappelle's comedy has always been considered dark humor, as he's ticked off a lot of people throughout his career. Many people point out that people who dislike his work should not be watching it, but when Chappelle shows up to a school event of 580 students who have a strong dislike for him, he's bound to receive harsh criticism. At one point during his visit to the Duke Ellington School of Art, a student even stated, "Your comedy kills." The student also shared that they were quite intimidated by Dave's presence, and the comedian was aware of that. Many of the students said that they were hesitant to address Chappelle directly. Dave also reportedly made a joke about a student who left the event early. It was stated by a student that there was an obvious power imbalance between 14 to 18-year-olds and Dave Chappelle. Moreover, Chappelle's fans were also at the majority there, but they stayed silent throughout the event as critics called him out. It was also reported that Dave's fans reached out to the principal of the school to share their discontent upon not being able to state their opinions. When asked about the constant criticism from the students and parents, Dave's spokesperson reasoned that it's actually good for the school as it's putting the school on the map. Towards the end of the event, Dave responded to the threats that the protesters were receiving. He reportedly switched to a less passive manner and stated, "This is my family, and whether they know it or not, I love these kids. I don't want to hear about any threats to these kids. These kids don't deserve that." He ended the event by distributing Thanksgiving meals to everyone who attended the event, and he also gave away 3 tickets for his show to the students. Number 3. Dave Chappelle under constant heat. Dave Chappelle's comedy has always said some questionable things during his stand-ups. The most common topics of Chappelle's comedy that receive the most criticism include his transphobia and the LGBTQ community. Dave once even labeled himself as Team TERF, which stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. Chappelle also supported J.K. Rowling when she made some insensitive comments about the trans community. Moreover, Dave has openly ridiculed trans people. He once called the genitals of trans women plant-based meat. Dave also made a statement about his late trans friend Daphne Dorman. Daphne Dorman was a trans comedian and a friend of Dave's. Dave has mentioned Daphne in many of his stand-ups. He also mentioned her in his latest Netflix special, The Closer. But the comments he made about trans women in his special triggered many people. He made a joke which evidently misgendered his friend Daphne, but he reasoned that Daphne would have loved that joke. Ever since then, the trans community has largely protested against Netflix regarding Chappelle's comment. When questioned about it, the co-CEO Ted Sarandos stated that they didn't know it would cause a problem. He further stated that the trans people would have to make their peace with the special being on Netflix. Dave has repeatedly stated that his intentions are not to hurt anyone, rather, he wants to build a relationship with the trans community where they can learn to take a joke. Number 2, celebrities and workers at Netflix calling out Dave Chappelle. After the release of Dave's The Closer, many celebrities as well as the workers at Netflix shared their discontent with Dave's transphobic remarks. One of Netflix's trans women employees criticized the release of The Closer. Jacqueline Moore, one of the showrunners for Dear White People, revealed her decision of boycotting Netflix. A senior software engineer at Netflix named Tara Field shared a lengthy post on Twitter sharing the pain that the trans community has faced over the years. Schitt's Creek actor and creator Dan Levy also shared his support for the protesters against Netflix. The Good Place actress Jamila Jamil also attended the protest and stood in support of the trans community. She took to Twitter to criticize Dave, stating that she wishes he stay away for a long time. The Umbrella Academy actor Elliot Page, who came out as trans in 2020, shared his support for the protesters on Twitter. He wrote, "I stand with the trans, non-binary, and BIPOC employees at Netflix fighting for more and better trans stories and a more inclusive workspace." Former Star Trek actor George Takei took to Twitter to point out that if Dave had made fun of minority groups like Asians, Jews, and Muslims, would Netflix have still defended him? He continued that it's not hard to feel like trans people are considered fair game in America. Billy Eichner, whose game show is also on Netflix, voiced his support for the trans community on his Twitter. Number 1, Dave Chappelle's response to the critics. Dave Chappelle responded to the criticism he was receiving leading up to his Netflix special. However, while many people had expected an apology, he did not deliver as per their expectations. Dave replied to a claim regarding his invitation to speak to the transgender workers at Netflix. Dave stated, "That's not true." Dave also stated that he is willing to speak to them, but he will not bend to anybody's demands. He stated that he will meet with them under 3 conditions. He must pick the time and place, those who are willing to speak to him must watch The Closer till the end, and thirdly, they must admit that Hannah Gatsby is not funny. While this was not the response that people were expecting to hear, Dave still stands by his transphobic comments. Dave Chappelle's comedy has once again put him under a lot of heat, but it seems like the comedian will not be backing out anytime soon. This brings us to the end of the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, do remember to hit that like button, and if you haven't done so already, then do be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon so you can be notified of our upcoming videos. We'll see you guys again in another one real soon. Until then, take care and goodbye.